We live in an extremely polarizing time. Trying to find middle ground with anyone with a different point of view doesn't seem to happen enough. My next guest graduated from the University of Berkeley and saw this polarization firsthand. But he also saw that things might not be as divided as they may seem. My guest Manu Meel is the CEO of BridgeUSA, an organization dedicated to bring conservative and liberal-minded people together.
To those that doubt the ability to find common ground because of how divided our values and visions for the future are, is that we don't have to necessarily find common ground. Disagreement is great. Let's at least get to the point of being disagreeable.
So I'm very excited to sit down with Manu and see why he is a real American game changer. Well, first and foremost, Manu, thank you so much for coming on my show and joining me today. One thing that really got our interest of our team is the idea of you bringing together a lot of people. But before we go into all that, I kind of wanted to hear how you began and how you got your start in the world of politics, or if you even consider that.
Absolutely. So I had no interest in politics, and I still have no interest in politics. The reason why I say that is because in 2017, I was a second semester freshman at UC Berkeley. I distinctly remember I was coming back from my class. It was a math seminar, and we're walking through the plaza, and suddenly I walk through a coffee shop that's broken in. The glass is broken in, and CNN banner is saying, UC Berkeley students protest Breitbart speaker's speech. And I was like, what is going on? Right next to me, Nick, is this CNN crew that's filming that segment. And that, in that moment, is politics hitting home. I mean, I'm an immigrant. No, I'm not an immigrant. My parents are immigrants. I grew up in India for a while. I lived in the US all my life. Politics has never touched us as individuals, as people. We've thought about working hard, moving up, and then getting our degrees and getting out. That night, it was Milo Yiannopoulos. He had been invited to speak at UC Berkeley. And what ensued was protest from Antifa folks, from left students, from right students, everyone in the middle. People that wanted to protest came in, people that wanted to make a scene came in. And the next day, me and a couple of friends got together and thought, hey, can we just create a space for people to listen? That's it. I was a pre-med student, had no interest. It was purely a focus on trying to get people to understand. We had amazing friends, Roger Karma out at Notre Dame, Cortland Carpenter out at CU Boulder. They had built this concept called Bridge Notre Dame, Bridge CU Boulder. Idea was, hey, can we get people to understand each other? And so we said, hey, let's link up with them. And the rest is history. We embarked on this adventure defined by friendship, by community, by family, by this desire to recognize that we as people, e pluribus unum, out of many one. That motto has to not only ring true, it is the essence of our country's history and what's going to take us forward as a country.
Absolutely. You know, one thing I've noticed is that young people in general are getting a lot more involved in politics, being a lot more activated. Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. When I think about young people, let's define that really quickly. I think about students from the age of 15 to 25. So you're Gen Z, sort of the core of Gen Z. Take me, for example. I graduated last year. I'm 22 years old. The four major events that have defined my political history is 9/11, the Great Recession, the 2016 election, the year that is 2020, the pandemic, the riots, Jan 6th. Those are four massive institutional failures. Doesn't matter where you are, on the right and the left. That means that young people have a deep desire to either change the system or to totally disengage. And what you're talking about is you're seeing those loud, young, excited, ambitious folks on the left, the right, the middle, that are saying, hey, we got to change what's going on. Now, one thing I want to make clear is to all those folks that are scared of change, this is not change in trying to change the core essence of the country. It's change in this notion that our institutions have to be more responsive. So my fear, to your point, is yes, young people are getting involved, but if they don't see things evolving, if they don't see democracy responding to their calls for change, then I fear that you're going to see massive disengagement.
Yes. So that's one of the reasons why I actually wanted you to come on here and talk a little bit about BridgeUSA, is that there's a lot of disengagement, there's a lot of people going at it. Tell me a little bit about BridgeUSA and what exactly you guys are trying to do.
Well, first, Nick, I want to thank you for giving us a voice and giving us a platform, letting us talk about our story. The reason why that's important is because in our politics, you're going to get a lot more clicks from this interview if I'm a flamethrower. And so I appreciate you sacrificing your ratings for elevating a narrative that is focused on us getting along, not for the sake of unity, but for better understanding. So thank you. BridgeUSA's goal is, if I were to define it, is defined around 3 values: viewpoint diversity, solution-oriented politics, and constructive engagement. All of that combined means a very simple thing, and that is we get young people to talk to each other. There's nothing complex about it. Before, if you had asked me 2 years ago what we do, I would have said, oh, you know, we organize and we get students to talk about democracy. No, democracy is back to basics, Nick, and we get young people to understand that we are all humans, and if we can't coexist, then we don't have a democracy. There's nothing novel that we do, but what we are doing at a unique scale is equipping, organizing, and scaling at a pace that we've never seen before in the space of movements that are focused on trying to remodel and change how we're talking about our politics.
Yeah, so you say you bring them together and you're getting young people to talk. Some ways I think that's almost impossible. We get more people yelling at each other now than anything. Tell me about those conversations. Tell me about young people talking to each other and how's that turning out?
Let me give you a story. So 2 months ago, we went to our Arizona State chapter, your alma mater.
All right.
We missed you by 2 years. You would have been a great leader of the BridgeUSA chapter. Now, that being said, the BridgeUSA chapter is led by some amazing folks: Emily Garcia, Josh Fixel, Justin Haywood. We showed up to their campus. They have this event called Bridge the Gap. So what Bridge the Gap is it's this massive auditorium. Yearly, they get all the student groups together. They ask faculty to give student credit, to students to show up, and you basically line up about 15 round tables. And those tables are students that are Republicans, your gun-owning, super conservative activists, you're like liberal, hippie, bright-colored haired folks, people like me that are just boring, everyone involved and engaged. Now, Nick, I was so shocked. These students are all talking not about just like kumbaya stuff. They're having hard debates. I was discussing a conversation about vaccine mandates, and we had 5 to 6 students around that round table. One student said, "Hey, I'm not vaccinated." You would have never, by the way, said that in not a bridge discussion. That's nearly impossible to say on a college campus. But then right after that, we had students that were challenging them directly, saying, "Hey, I think that you're actively spreading misinformation," but that didn't devolve in a conflict. Then the other student retorted with some studies, and you had a real deep intellectual exchange that probably didn't change anyone's mind, but it softened their defenses and allowed them to see each other with common and valid stories. And that is what Bridge does, is the talk is not there for unity, the talk is there for better understanding. Because I don't think that we're necessarily divided, I think that we misunderstand each other. Division implies irreconcilable differences. Divide and misunderstanding implies reconcilable differences. And so if you recognize that those are reconcilable, start breaking silos.
Beautiful. So where do you guys hope to be at the end of this in 50 years?
Absolutely.
What has BridgeUSA done?
Absolutely. Operationally, it means getting every incoming college freshman, incoming current student access to a BridgeUSA chapter. What I mean by that is when you're thinking about a young person coming on college campuses, we want them to think about BridgeUSA not necessarily as the core political activity, but a necessary component of their political diet. You're not going to like it when I say this, but BridgeUSA is the broccoli to your junk food. And what I mean by that is we want every young person to not only be engaging and coming to at least 1 or 2 bridge dialogues, but use this as a way to be a better actor. Use this as a way to create more change. You believe in criminal justice? You believe in climate change? Great. Well, here's the problem. You can't get anything passed right now, pal, because you live in a democracy. And the only way to get folks to get stuff passed is to learn, why is my person disagreeing with me? You know, you believe in family, you believe in tradition, you believe in culture. Great. Understand the person on the left that disagrees with you. Theoretically and philosophically, here's the vision of BridgeUSA. We live in the most ambitious social experiment in the history of humanity. The United States is the most diverse, most armed, most democratic, most technologically advanced society we've ever seen on the face of the planet. And so if you ask me, yes, will we have challenges? Of course, we're striving for idealism. The problem right now that you see around our society, those challenges exist. They're real, they're serious, and we have to tackle them. At the same time, we have to recognize the greatness of this experiment. And so where does BridgeUSA come in? It recognizes the greatness of this experiment. It recognizes that we are stewards of this experiment, from Washington to Lincoln to FDR to Obama to Donald Trump even, to now us as people. We steward this experiment, but the only way we can steward this is by recognizing that everyone has a real voice in society, everyone stands for something, and everyone's story means something. That's the goal of Bridge, is to recognize that and move forward so that we restore 2 things in the society. 1 is the trust and common bounds between Americans, and 2 is the eagerness and boldness of spirit that has characterized American society since the start. We've lost both of those things, and Bridge's job is to reclaim that.
It's beautiful. Well, first and foremost, I love broccoli. So having broccoli a part of my meal is a good thing.
Did you like the jump from broccoli to the most ambitious social experiment?
That was great. It was like, where's he going? But yeah, I love broccoli, so I appreciate that. Why do you think, though, why do you think young people, why do you think this country is so divided right now?
Yeah.
Where did this polarization begin?
I have two thoughts there. And let me be a little bit humble in the sense that I'm only speaking from my perspective and for the young people that I know. And it's a very small slice of American society, and I have yet to explore and see all of it. So take my opinion with a grain of salt. That being said, 2 points. One is that I would push back a little bit on the notion that it's divided. We're not living through the Great Divide, we're living through the Great Misunderstanding. And again, I want to emphasize that. That's not some naive platitude. I went to a Republican event, and there they said the biggest threat to democracy is Democrats, and Democrats are going to destroy our country. I went to a Democratic event, they said the biggest threat to democracy is Republicans, and they're going to destroy our country. That's not just a divide, that's just a total, because either one of them is right, or we're going down one path, and there's only one outcome at the end of that. And so that's the first thing I would check is it gives too much credit to those that divide us to assume that we are actually that divided. Now to the second point, the reason why we're increasingly polarized, you've got social media, can't take that into account. You have foreign actors, you have sectors of society within Democrats and Republicans that are focused on setting up and establishing ideology that they believe require exclusion. But ultimately, we are at fault for our own polarization. We are what make up this democracy, so we have to stop complaining about division if we're not willing to do anything about it. I ultimately think I'm the problem. Hopefully, you're not as much of a problem as I am. We are all problems in this experiment. And so Bridge's job is to empower you, to recognize you have agency. You can change division tomorrow by trying to have a conversation with someone you disagree with. Just do that. Try it.
Yeah.
What's going to happen?
What are some of the challenges, major challenges that you face when, starting your organization and getting things going?
There's a lot of real challenges. I think the first step to recognizing and building something is we've got a big mountain to climb, Nick. A couple of challenges. First challenge is that when we go on the ground and we go to a really conservative university, students think that we're liberals. We go to a really liberal university, students think we're conservatives, because we're basically ultimately in the beginning providing a safe haven for freedom of thought, expression, dialogue, understanding. So people that are going to be most under threat will come to Bridge dialogues. That's the first challenge, is fighting back that perception. The second challenge is that it is so much easier to give into the instinct of partisanship and polarization. When we're on social media, I'm thinking about trying to say something. We got to attack, but how do we maintain the spirit of BridgeUSA while trying to thrive in a sensationalist culture? And the third piece is breaking out into the mainstream. That's the biggest challenge. We are at risk of building a bubble of bridge builders, for lack of better phrasing. The way we fix that is we have to get out there, organize, and empower. But the issue is that oftentimes the people are trying to reach is that young student who's a STEM person, is trying to go to college, get a degree, go work at Microsoft, have a good family, and live a happy life. It's hard to ask that person to get involved, but I need that person to get involved. I need the young woman that's trying to be a major in English, and she's just going and she's trying to read, and she doesn't want to participate in these protests, and she wants conservative authors and liberal authors, and she's just totally disengaged, because why wouldn't she be? We need them to get involved, but that's the challenge.
Yeah.
It's tough.
What does our country look like here in the future? And I know that's kind of broad, but with everything that's going on and with the work that you're doing and in the hopes that we're bringing more people together, what do you think that we'll see this country here in the future?
Like with all my answers, I'm going to qualify this one. So there's 3 trends that are destabilizing the country currently. The first is that we are going to be the first majority-minority democracy in the history of democracies. It's never happened before, where you have no minority or race that is more than 50%. That is a fact that our society will have to contend with. The second fact is that we've never been at a point of such technological advancement and change, rapid change defined by social media. And the third big destabilizing trend is that for the first time in about 75 years, the US's primacy in the world is being questioned. So that poses a lot of challenge on where the country could go. But here's the opportunity in all of that, is that when there's a lot of disruption and when there's a lot of destabilization, you have the opportunity for a lot of new institutions that span ethnicities, demographies, ideas, people, institutions that are trying to address those problems and move our country forward. So I think we're going to see a lot of institutions develop, and we should approach those institutions with an open mind. Because this country, let me remind you, Nick, has always been about innovating new institutions. That is what the founders had in mind, was a rigid constitutional structure that allows for adaptation. The other piece that you'll see, I think, in our society is when we think about young people, us, our generation is uniquely equipped to handle this moment because we are the most diverse generation. We are growing up at a time of a lot of pessimism. So it's only up from here. And the third thing is that we're not necessarily more educated, but we're more connected, which poses an opportunity for better understanding of each other. Social media, we're growing up with it. We're not suddenly being struck with it. The current generation is basically like the dinosaurs. They got hit by 3 meteors at once. And I'm just going to end with this again. It is so easy to be down right now. I get down a lot. Let me be honest. It's okay to be vulnerable about how difficult the moment is. But let me remind you again, in an experiment as ambitious as the one that we're undertaking right now, a strive for idealism will always be met with a lot of failures, but the successes that come out of it is what we have to look for, capitalize on. And I don't think there's another generation more capable of doing that than ours.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And that's what we're striving for. In so many ways, if we can bring people together and we can find hope and we can find ways that people have common ground, I think the country will be in a lot better place.
It'll absolutely be in a better place. And I have to tell you, I'm deeply appreciative of all the work that you've done, the expertise you bring to this work, and the fact that we're going to sit after this and I'm going to pick your brain because you've got a lot to add to this conversation, sir. And I would just say that, again, to those that doubt the ability to find common ground because of how divided our values and visions for the future are, is that we don't have to necessarily find common ground. Disagreement is great. Let's at least get to the point of being disagreeable.
100%.
That's success.
100%. Well, Manu, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you
I
so
really
much.
appreciate it.
I appreciate you, brother.
Absolutely.
Thank you.